mouth is when I'm ocean waves.
Today on Nova Legends podcast, I have former national team soccer player Colette Cunningham, also played at Lake Braddock and NC State, was a tremendous goal scorer in her time. Colette, great to see you. Thanks for doing this.
You as well. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, of course. Well, I feel like we've been in the same room a million times. My son played with Mason, your nephew, in soccer. But for some reason, I don't ever remember us having any, deep conversations. But I'm glad you want to do this because you've done so many interesting things. Just to kind of go through your background for folks who may have forgotten. I know you at some point you were in the Lake Braddock area of Burke, because I lived on Ashburn Drive as well, but we must have moved right before you guys moved in. We went to the Robinson area. All won a state championship. I believe you played with Mia Hamm, and
Yes.
I believe you also won a state championship in basketball, or were you not on that team yet?
So yes, the year that they won, I was on the team.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, and then you went to Marymount, broke all kinds of scoring records there. Ended up transferring to NC State, did much of the same there. Then you, interesting enough, you played for the Warthogs in the old indoor league, which was kind of a thing in the early 90s. There was no pro men's soccer league at all. It was only indoor, and you got a chance to do that. Played overseas with the historic Italian club Lazio. And then I mentioned earlier, you were on the national team. I've got at least several caps, I believe, on the national team. Interesting enough, got into law enforcement, which I believe you retired recently. You've had a very successful dog business. I believe you train dogs and maybe even house them as well.
Yeah.
Tell us all about that.
Yep.
And recently I've noticed you've been giving speeches in self-defense and maybe other types of inspirational speeches as well, as we can get into. And I know you're a fitness nut from following you on Instagram.
Trying to stay alive. That's all.
Okay. Did I get most of that right, Colette?
Say again.
Did I get most of that right?
You did.
Okay.
Yeah. Well done.
Oh, thanks. Well, it's a lot. So, the first thing that comes to mind with you is I talk to a lot of male athletes that tell me that the players today aren't as tough as they used to be. The game was much more physical, especially basketball was much more physical, but athletes in general wanted it more. Now, what about women's soccer, female soccer? My recollection, or my what I've heard about you, you're a very aggressive player, very tough player. Do you think the female athletes of today are tougher than they were back then, or not as tough as they were when you played?
So in my opinion, I think that back then we didn't have all the stressors that we do today in terms of social media and just all the things in general going on. So I do believe that we were a little bit more honed in and focused on our goals and didn't have that many distractions to take us off like what we really wanted to do. So I believe that we were a little bit harder just because of those reasons. We didn't have all those outlets back in the day. My club coach, Denise Michelow, we were on that team all growing up. We didn't have all those different teams where, like, if your parents weren't happy, you could change. And if you weren't happy, you could change. I mean, I guess you could. It just wasn't as prevalent back then. And so, if you sat the bench, you had to work harder. And if you weren't get the playing time you wanted, you had to do all the extra work to get there. And so I think for those reasons, we were a little bit harder.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Well, I don't know how closely you follow women's basketball, but recently there was a play in the championship game. Caitlin Clark, who's an amazing player, I guess she has a trademark, "You Can't See Me." And there was another player on the winning team in the final, Angel. I just lost her last name. Anyway, got into her face after the game, and it was a strange conversation to me because they made it seem like the fact that Caitlin Clark at some point, talked trash, left her open for any attack. I just thought that was a little bit strange. When you were playing, what was the mood with your competitors? Were you guys fierce on the field, tough tackles, trash talking? What was it like back then when you played?
I'm laughing because yeah, we were pretty physical. I know you and Liz are close, and Liz Pike and I, obviously, we were on the same team growing up together, and on the Shooting Stars with Denise Michelow. We had some drag down, I mean, brawls while we were playing. We were extremely physical. I'm talking, we would clear, our parents would clear the bench if there was something physical going on with their daughters. Because back then, our parents weren't really as involved with the sport, knowing exactly what's going on. You know, they'd be yelling on the sidelines, kick the ball, whatever. But if somebody touched their daughters, we had a group of mothers, mine included, that would definitely jump out of the stands to help us. But we were definitely pretty physical on the field from what I remember.
Yeah. As an official in mine's basketball, I always felt like the parents at girls' games, women's games, are much more reactive than boys' games. If you don't call a foul, something leads to more physical play, they blame the ref more quickly than they do in a boys' game. That was my experience. What about, we're getting ready for a World Cup, and the women's have completely dominated the World Cup, due in part to Jill Ellis, my Robinson classmate. And do you look at the opportunities those women have, and you played on a national team, so you got a taste of that. Does it ever make you regretful that you didn't get those opportunities? Obviously, you would have been in the mix for all those opportunities. Probably pro contracts either here or overseas. All the things you struggled to achieve. Good players now, they're available to all of them. Does it ever bother you, or are you just happy that they get the opportunities today?
Yeah, I'm ecstatic that they get the opportunities, all the things that we didn't get. And I see that now in these women. But I also think it's very hard too. You have all these women with contracts everywhere. Again, the distractions are a big deal to me.
Mhm.
So I think it's a double-edged sword. But for me, looking in, I'm so happy for them because they deserve it. They work so hard. And so it's really nice to see all the things that we didn't have that the women are now getting the chance to achieve.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I didn't mention your siblings, who I'm good friends with John. I believe he's your younger brother, right? By a couple of years.
Older.
He's
Older brother.
older brother. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. He was my friend Jason's year, or he might have been older than Jason.
No, he was older than Jason too.
Okay.
So
Okay.
he's the old guy. Just keep him old. Yeah, you don't need to make him young.
I don't have to help his ego at all. He's a musician.
No.
Yeah. And then John, and then Julie, who I believe won a national championship at Princeton as a coach, played at William and Mary. Great coach, great person. Her career path was coaching, and she rose to the top of that advocation. She was great at it. You didn't focus on coaching. You chose another path. Do you look back? Do you ever wish you would have gotten to coaching? Is coaching something that you enjoy a lot?
Coaching was never my thing. I appreciated, Julie was amazing at what she did, and watching her throughout the years. I mean, she is just amazing, hands down. But that was not my thing. I wasn't as good coaching as I was playing. I don't think I was as inspiring as like my sister was in coaching. And the ability to like explain exactly what you need them to do and when you need them to do it, that was all difficult to me. We're just playing, being told what to do and running around was my thing. So I'm honored that I was able to watch her throughout the years, but just wasn't my cup of tea.
Yeah, because it is amazing when you think about it, all the great coaches from our area, Julie,
Amazing.
Pat Berg, Jill Ellis, Barb Wickstrand. I can go on. I'm going to forget a lot of people, but so many of the folks that you grew up with coach. And it's amazing that you had these great careers and never really looked back. You did your soccer and then you moved on to other things.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
I pretty much played myself out, I say. I was at the end of the career, I was like, barely walking, hard to walk, knees achy. So I was good hanging it up at the time that I did. And I never really looked back.
Yeah. Well, how did you get started in soccer and sports generally?
So generally, when we started, we grew up in New York, and my brother and sister were always involved in sports. And so I followed in my sister. I wanted to be my sister growing up. That's all I can remember. Just when she was out dribbling a ball, I was dribbling a ball with her. And that's eventually how I got into playing soccer. And we moved up to the Northern Virginia area. We went to Lake Braddock High School, got involved in basketball as well. And I just like to be active. And again, back then we didn't have all the distractions. So as you know, we were in the streets playing ball and doing all the fun things. And so I just enjoyed it. It was a good outlet for me. You know, I had I won't say difficult childhood in comparison to a lot of people, but I had some things that that were a bit difficult. And so sports kind of gave me that outlet to kind of just focus there and not so much with the other stuff that was going on. So
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Coach Michelow, and I assume that's either Gene Michelow's wife or a daughter. Is that Gene Michelow's wife?
His wife,
It's
Denise.
his wife. You mentioned her, and of course you mentioned Julie. Any other important early influences in your soccer?
I mean, really, all the women that you had mentioned somewhat, but there's so many, like the Sue Vodicas and the Kim Maslin and the, you know, Emily Pickerings. And see, Julie has this ability to attract amazing women around her. And I grew up with that. So, yeah, all those women, the Jill Ellis, all those people from our area, when I was going to camps and doing all those things, they were all there and so motivating and just great people. We were lucky, I think, to have that amount of amazing people in one area. Yeah. So they were all my role models. They were always around my sister. I was always watching them, just looking up to them 24/7. So they were all, it was like that ring crew of women. Julie's, you know, 5 or 6 years older than us, that was my crew that I wanted to be like.
Were you always a top performer, or did you have to work at it?
So I think I like to score goals, and that was like a knack that I had, but I definitely had to work hard, but I felt that it was a little bit, also I was blessed with a little bit of athleticism. So I had to work a lot harder in the classroom, put it that way.
Right.
I wasn't out of my academia family. I was more the common sense person. I wasn't so much the academic. So I had to work hard for sure, but not as hard as I had to work academically.
Do you and Julie have similar games in how you play soccer?
Julie's more the midfielder. She's controlling the field, great touch on the ball and giving you the perfect passes. And I'm more like getting the ball and going to goal.
Yeah.
So yeah, a little different, but we work well together.
Sounds like she plays like she coaches, and kind of sees everything and make the right play at the right time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, what about basketball? So how did you get into basketball? Who are some of your role models or important coaches that you had?
So I had played AAU. I played like travel basketball, and into college. I actually played my first year at Marymount as well. But basketball was more fun for me. So I wasn't so much, I didn't have in basketball, it wasn't like I saw somebody and I wanted to really be like them. Basketball was more like just a fun thing to do, and I enjoyed doing it. And so yeah, it was just a good addition to round out the soccer, you know, in the off season.
Yeah. What was it about Lake Braddock? You guys, we had so many, I could say we, because I was there until right in 7th grade. No, I didn't make it to 7th grade, but Julie went there through 8th grade. But why were there so many great athletes and teams there? Was it, I think Bob Carson, I believe, was the AD. But Coach Trowbridge on the Trowbridge on basketball. I forgot the soccer coach. She's a great coach too. What's her name?
Carolyn Rice.
That's right, Carolyn Rice. I'm so sorry. She watches. Yes. I apologize.
How did I not mention Carolyn? She's amazing.
Yeah, I apologize too. She's great.
Yeah.
But what was it about Lake Braddock? There were so many great athletes, so many great teams.
That's a good question. I think it was just such a big school.
Yeah.
You know, in the area, it was like 7th through 12th when I went. Mm-hmm. It was just a really big school, I guess. And I don't know, our parents all did a really good job of moving in the same area. So
that's right. Yeah. they colluded moving the same area.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you mentioned the Shooting Stars. Did I say that right? Yeah.
You did,
And
yeah.
that's a team, when I started the Facebook group, I know you're just recently on Facebook. We started these legend groups with all the
I
different.
love it.
Oh, well, thanks. As a way to connect all the former athletes, coaches, officials, just fans as well. And Shooting Stars is a team I've heard about. I interviewed lots of the Bluebells and some of the other teams, but the Shooting Stars, who was it that I first came in contact? You guys had you got a lot of great players. Anyway, tell us about the Shooting Stars, some of your teammates on that team.
Woo, they are amazing. We grew up with Denise. Denise was a hard ass, and she took no crap from us. So we were, and we had amazing personalities on that team as well. We had Kelly Harlowe, turned Pulisic, who went Division I at George Mason University, and she was amazing player growing up. Of course, the one and only Elizabeth Pike, my best friend, she was amazing and went Division I at American University. We had Aaron McCarthy, who went to Robinson and was Division I at Radford. We had Emily Satchel. We had Christy Hook, Kelly Mumford, Kristen Aquavella. I don't know if you have heard that name, but Kristen Aquavella, she actually was in the Virginia Beach area and was playing on the Shooting Stars during that time with us. She went into the military. She's an admiral now, which is huge, an admiral, and she's stationed in Hawaii, but she's big time. We just had, so many amazing players. And I really think, it was Denise that made us that amazing. We were so young when she got us. We couldn't go anywhere. We were stuck with her. And she just brought out the best in us. It was like having a second mother, which at the time was very beneficial for me. And she just kind of kept us in line. I was probably one of the harder players for her to coach back in the day. I won't say a bad kid, but I ran to the beat of my own drum, I like to say now. And so Denise was a huge influence in my life and keeping, me from going astray at a young age. But just having those girls around me on the team, we all just complimented one another. We never really got in fights and all that. And even if we were sitting the bench or you were one to sit the bench, it wasn't, there wasn't any animosity. It was like, let's work harder. Let's, be better. And so it was a really great experience on the Shooting Stars, and everybody went so far, and we all still keep in touch, the majority of us. And it was a great adventure. I'm so honored that I was there and part of it, and that we are all still pretty close.
Do Michelows always coach different teams, or do they ever coach together?
I don't think they ever coached together. I know when Denise had us, Jean had the Cardinals. They were a couple years older than us. And so I don't know if they've ever coached together later in life, but I know their son, Tyler, coaches.
Yeah. He's
big in the area. So.
Yeah. For a guy who didn't follow soccer for many years and started to, when my son started playing, Michelow is a name we just keep hearing everywhere you go, you run into a Michelow. Like, it's like Northern Virginia soccer royalty. What about the team?
Yeah.
Were you guys like the Bluebells, and that every year you'd add 2 or 3 players? Like you'd do good, and someone from SYC would want to join you, and then next thing you know, 2 girls from Annandale will come. Did you guys like get different parts every year as you grew?
I don't recall if that happened or not. I don't think so, because I remember we had such a heated battle with the SYC, the Springfield, with like Holly Helmuth and all them. It was such like I can't see us going from those teams to one another because we were so against one another. But I'm sure it happened. We would pick up like a player or 2 each year, but it wasn't anything like 5 or 6. It was always like 1 or 2 here or there.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned Holly Helmuth, who played at UMass and also played at Lee. I remember I saw you guys play with Mia. I was there. You guys played at Woodson. Maybe it was a regional final or something, but I happened to see that game. Who are some of your top competition on the club level? Was Holly's team the best
Yes,
competition?
yes. I can't remember all their names, but definitely Holly was, because she was a defender. So she'd be in my shorts the entire time. So how could I forget her? I can't. But other than that, yeah, her team was very tough. The Springfield team, that was like our biggest battle.
Yeah.
So
I think Bridget Dow played with them as well, because I think
Bridget,
yeah,
yes,
yeah, I think I did see
and
her play.
Bridget went to Lee.
Right.
She was amazing too. Yeah.
Yeah, good times. So, well, let's go to your the high school basketball. So, let's go to high school soccer. So, you played for Coach Rice. Did you right away as a freshman? Were you on the varsity? Were you able to contribute right away, or did you have to, wait for your turn?
No, I was on varsity from the get-go, and she just did a really good job back then of orchestrating us. It's high school, right? I always feel like with high school players, they're dealing with so much stuff in school, and then you're coming out to a field after school and you're like seeing your friends, and it's like a little bit social, at least back then it was. And she didn't play either. She would have us running hills if we were talking too much. Me and Liz tended to talk a lot, and so we'd get our whole team in trouble. We seemed to do that quite a bit. Actually, it was probably me more than Liz, but I always took her down with me because it was better to have two than just by myself. But she did a great job with us, and we had a ton of fun. She kept it fun. I don't know, it was so long ago, but I just remember her being such an amazing person. I always loved that I had women coaching me, growing up. I think that was very important. I know maybe it doesn't matter, but I think to me it did as a little girl, having Denise and having Carolyn Rice there as you're going through difficult times, in that time frame, being in high school and all that. So I was very blessed with those two. I mean, I am who I am probably because of those two. So
yeah. Well, how did you meet Mia Hamm, and what was a young Mia Hamm like? And were you surprised? Well, have you been surprised at how far she's gone?
not at all. Mia from day one is a committed, dedicated individual for whatever she's doing. It doesn't matter what she's doing, but she's committed. And she's been like that ever since she was 15. We met obviously when she was at Lake Braddock, and she also played on the Shooting Stars. So we were together a lot. She was always laser focused. I remember, we'd take her to parties. We'd be in high school. There'd be like high school parties, and we'd take her. She wasn't really interested in that type of stuff because she was so worried about what she had to do the next morning. And at 15, I was thinking, what the hell is wrong with her? But obviously knowing later what we know now, we know what she was doing. So she was quite an individual, just a perfect person in my eyes. She was very kind. Her family adopted children, and she was, it was like one huge happy family. They were very loving. And I ended up, when I went to go play in Italy, her father was military, and he was actually stationed over there when I went over there. So I would see him a lot when I was over in Italy on the military base. So that was cool. Yeah. But yeah, she's an amazing human. I'm not surprised at all she went as far as she did because her laser focused commitment to whatever she's doing.
Yeah. So if you picked up the phone and called her, would she respond? And is she still in touch with her high school friends?
I believe, I haven't talked to her in a little bit. But she's, if I called her, we would pick up like we never left off. So,
and you're a competitive person. Here you are going against a player who's going to be a worldwide superstar. Did you guys compete, or did you want to be the one to score the goals? Was it ever any tension to be the person on the team?
Sometimes you're around people, if you're in a competitive field, and you sense they're just not as, they're more worried about the competition than they are the person. Mia was very worried about, she wanted me to be the best I could be. I remember her sitting down talking about visualization. She's telling me, you really have to visualize when you score a goal. and how you score it, what you're doing. And I started doing that, and it was such a change in my game. I would score all the time. And I was like, I got to keep doing this, because every time I'm visualizing, I'm scoring, you know? And it was one of the things when I was asked to come up to the national team, you know, Anson called me and he said, and if I'm jumping ahead, I don't know if you want to, he had called and said, like, hey, I want you to come to this camp. I called about 3 other people and they can't come. So if you want to come, I think you should come. And in my head, I'm like, okay, well, he called 3 other people. All right, well, okay, yeah, I'm in. So I ended up talking to Mia, and that's when the whole visualization stuff came in, and we go on this month-long travel. And, you know, Anson's meeting with me before every game and saying, like, you got to score. And if you score, you know, you're going to have a place on this team. Well, he would say that every game. And so every game I kept scoring. And so, you know, but it was all due to Mia, like, taking her time with me and really wanting me to be better as a person. And I always, till this day, looked at her as like this amazing person to be able to do that when you're also in competition, you know? I mean, I probably wasn't competition for her in her head, but I do know even at the national team level, they are all like that with one another. It may be different now, but back in the day with like the Michelle Akers, Julie Foudy and all them, like everybody, it didn't matter if you were in a camp and then not in a camp for a year or they were like, they wanted you to be your best. And it didn't matter who you were, you know? And so I always remembered that. And I've taken that as a woman through my life with other women and just in general with other individuals to push other people to be their best. And without that competitiveness inside me that I need to beat you, because there's always somebody better. There's always somebody faster, funnier, smarter, right? And so you just have to push yourself to be the best you can be. And she helped me do that.
Yeah, it's nice to hear that she was so grounded, and it sounds like the other players were as well, because you hear rumors of the women's national team over the last 10 years or so. They've had some infighting, and I think the reason for that is being on the women's national team is such a huge part of their income, of their profile, that it's almost all or nothing. I mean, there's other things that you can do in life, but it's so key for them. So it was nice, you know, at least back in those days, there was some camaraderie, and they tried to help each other. We'll get back to that. I want to talk about Kelly Harlowe, because I heard her son's a pretty good soccer player. The guy plays for Chelsea, Christian Pulisic.
I think he's okay. Yeah,
he's pretty good.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, better than my son. So, but anyway, what was Kelly like back then? I mean, obviously, you never know what your friends' children are going to do. But how about your relationship with Kelly? And have you guys maintained your friendship through the years?
Kelly and I, yes, we talk often. And she is another one who I looked up to tremendously, along with Liz on the Shooting Stars. I spent a lot of time with her growing up. I spent a lot of summers with her and her family. And she was always very poised, very controlled, very smart. She liked to have fun, you know, but she wasn't overbearing. She wasn't like I probably was. She was just solid. She was solid for being that age. She was solid, and everybody knew it, even on the Shooting Stars. Like she was our captain. She had her shit together always. And, you know, she ended up having a son at a young age, and it could have stopped her, right? It's a very difficult thing to have a child that young, and not Kelly. She crushed it, and she was an amazing mom. She ended up going to Division I, George Mason, where she met her husband, Mark Pulisic, who also played in the league that I was in with the Washington Warthogs. And she just made the best of her life. And she was all about being a mom first. She was a teacher for a really long time. She did a lot of great things. And her thing is just she supports her kids every day, no matter what. And I think that's part of the reason that Christian became so successful.
Yeah. And I understand she also won a national championship at George Mason, I believe. Yeah. So she also was a top performer in college. So
100%. Yeah, she
Yeah.
was an amazing defender, and her left foot and her speed put her above everybody else.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Christian's left-footed as well, I believe, isn't he?
I think he is.
I think he is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll getting back to Lake Braddock. I know you guys won a state championship. Maybe you won a couple, but I know Tracey Kennedy was on one of those teams. Tell us about the Lake Braddock girls soccer team.
The Braddock team, when you mentioned Tracey, wow, what a great human. Her smile lights up a room. I still remember that, and her laugh and her freckles. She was amazing. And I'm trying to think, we had like Laura Teter,
Yeah.
badass, right? She was the basketball player as well. Karen Jenkins, basketball player as well. She was also soccer. And Julie Dorenzo, she was a defender. There were so many good people. We just had such a good time, I think.
Yeah.
And Carolyn, like I said, had done such a good job with us. Our team we were hardcore, and a lot of it was probably because Liz and Mia, we had Mia, she was hardcore. So everybody kind of, I think, rose to that occasion. And it was just a great time we had in high school together. I can't remember the players, but they were solid.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I once talked to Coach Jim Lewis. You might not know Coach Lewis, but he was a girls, the women's basketball coach at George Mason for years. He'd been at South Lakes before. He was a legendary player himself. Actually, integrated the public school leagues in Northern Virginia. But I got the feeling that he really enjoyed coaching Laura Teter. What kind of athlete was Laura? I know that she was a basketball stud. She had a great career at George Mason. So someone to play a high level two sports that, I mean, they're alike in the movement, but the skill is very different. So tell us about Laura as an athlete.
Laura had just the knack, that knack that athletes have, no matter what the sport is. And she was just a hard worker. She was, again, laser focused, and she always gave her heart and soul on the court. And I would sometimes, I would like to go there and joke around at times. I wasn't always serious, and I would be cutting up, and Laura, she didn't really like that. I don't know why, but she was always more serious. When she stepped on the court, that's it. Like all the stuff going on in the backgrounds, no longer. End of story. Me, not so much. But Laura, yeah, she was laser focused, and she would do whatever she wanted to do when she wanted to do it, and she got it done.
It's amazing you were surrounded by so many great athletes.
I know. The more we talk about it, I'm just like, gosh, this is amazing. We really did.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about is it Trowbridge or Trowbridge?
Trowbridge.
Trowbridge. Yeah. Well, she had a great reputation at Lake Braddock. She won a state championship. What kind of coach was she? And did you enjoy playing basketball for her?
I did. She was another one that was kind of like Denise, and she was just hardcore and didn't take crap. And she expected, when we got there, those 2 hours were hers. And she didn't like all the, extra. And I think that's why all these teams were successful, to be honest. They were coaches that cared about what they were doing. They cared about the players that were on their team. They wanted us to be better, genuinely wanted us to be better. And I'm just very lucky. She was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember the moment when you won the state basketball championship? That's always a pretty special moment in a basketball player's life.
When you mentioned this before, so I was on the team that year. I had a family incident, but I wasn't at the actual final game. So I wasn't in the finals, but it was the year that I did play. Mm-hmm. I just wasn't at the final game, but we did win it.
Yeah, you did win it. Well, let's talk, and I believe I was there. But let's talk a little bit about, I was just thinking, when I talk about great coaches, I didn't even mention Amanda Cromwell. But let's talk about going to Marymount. You end up going to Marymount, which it's close to here. Had to be a small school at the time. So you ended up at Marymount, and from Marymount, you went to NC State. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
So, as I mentioned when we started, I was not the academic person in the family. I was more, I call myself the athlete student, not the student athlete. So back in the day, I was set to go to NC State, and I was called by the NCAA like the night before I was leaving to go to preseason. And they were like, hey, we can't get you in. So I didn't have the scores to get in right then. And it was so long ago, I just remember getting called that night before. And so I was kind of like, what? Like, where do we go from here? You know, like this was my life. I was already supposed to be going there. And so I thought about joining the military. I thought about just taking a year off and traveling abroad. And then I was getting calls from Division III schools. I started talking to my family, like, what should I do? Like I said, academics were just hard for me. And I also just didn't take it seriously when I was little. I was into the sports that kept me busy. And unfortunately, the academics wasn't. So, but it was kind of a blessing in disguise. I got to Marymount, and it was actually Denise Michelow, who I didn't want to go far at this point because somebody was in my brain like, all you got to do is a year, get your grades up, and then you can go Division I. Like, it doesn't need to be the end of your story. And Denise said to me, listen, just start the season. If you don't like it, you can do something else or whatever, but you have to finish college, she said. So I was like, all right, here we go. So I go to Marymount, we're starting practice. I've got girls dribbling out of bounds. Literally, I'm passing the ball, they're dribbling out of bounds. They're, shooting from midfield. I was like, am I in a twilight zone right now? What is going on? Why am I here? What is happening? And again, Denise comes to a game and she says, don't pass the ball. Do everything you can. Just start scoring goals, Colette. You don't got to pass if they're dribbling out of bounds. She's like, do you want to go Division I? I said, yes. Well, then she said, you got to start scoring goals so people recognize you. So now I got to Marymount, and the classrooms are smaller. I had individual attention, and this is where, like a 12-step program, I go to my teachers like, I need help. I have not conquered this academic thing. I need help. So, I had my teachers helping me. They were making sure, I'm doing everything I need to do, get my grades up. I start scoring goals, and I'm like scoring 5, 6, 7 goals a game. And it would be like Cunningham 7, St. Mary's 0. But Denise is like, keep going. Don't stop, So I kept going, and my grades were rising, and I'm like, now in my head, I just got to keep scoring goals because Denise is like, keep scoring goals. I can't upset her. And so it ended up being a great year. I played basketball there. I just decided to see if I could walk onto the basketball team, and they took me, which was even greater because I had such a good time playing basketball at Marymount as well. And so it was a year of just really getting my shit together, unfortunately, but fortunately. So, and then Larry Gross, who I had already been in contact with, well, ironically, after I had done so well with my grades, Anson was also calling me from Chapel Hill because now he wanted me to go to Chapel Hill. So then I was really like, what the hell do I do now, right? But I was ecstatic. Denise calls and she says, well, listen, there's 2 ways to go with this. You can go to Chapel Hill, and you're going to be under Mia's shadow and all those other, amazing players that are all going to Chapel Hill. He's the national team coach. You'll be washed out probably, meaning you'll be behind everybody else. Or you can go to NC State and kind of make a name for yourself. Do you want to be, you've been under Mia the past, so many years. Do you want to keep doing this? Where, I thought about that, but that really didn't matter too much to me. But it was Larry, my college coach, he was a great recruiter. He wasn't always a soccer coach, but he was a great recruiter. and he was a great man and ended up being a great coach for me. So I was just unfortunate the way this whole situation happened, but very happy now it happened the way that it happened. And after that first year in Marymount, I was able to just go straight over to NC State and start playing there.
Did you enjoy Raleigh?
I loved Raleigh. Yes. Yes. Raleigh was great. It was now the girls that I was already set to go with the year before were all there. We had, I think, 5 or 6 people from my shooting star team and the area on the NC State team at the time. We had Megan Owings, Kelly Mumford, myself, Kelly Kiernan, Ann Brennan, and I'm probably missing one. That's 5. So they were already there. So it was a very easy transition for me because all my girls were there when I got there that next year.
Yeah.
So
Owens went to Robinson, didn't she?
yes.
Yeah. I took her sister to senior prom. That's a small world.
Yeah, yeah. They had a huge family, so I'm not surprised you took somebody somewhere.
Yeah, half the school was Owens. So
Yeah.
yeah. So how the team do? Obviously, UNC was so dominant. I know UVA was playing well in those days as well. Lori Gregg, and a former UNC player, was coaching by that time. So how did NC State do?
We were always in the top, I think, 5 when I was there. Yeah, we were pretty dang good. We had like Charmaine Hooper from the Canadian national team and Fabienne Gros. She was also the national team, Canadian national team. We had so many, phenomenal players at NC State when I was there. And I believe we were always in the top 5. Of course, we always lost to Chapel Hill, which I never let them live that down. One of my really good friends who I became friends with, Zola Solamente, she was at Chapel Hill the whole time. We were actually enemies. She was a defender. I was an attacker. She was in my shorts 24/7. Another one like Holly Helmuth. And we end up getting called up to the national team at the same time. End up on a flight together. I'm cursing because this girl's next to me. She's cursing because I'm next to her. And we end up on this long flight that delays everywhere, lose baggage. It was like planes, trains, and automobiles. We finally get there to the first training camp where you have to wake up and do these fitness tests, right? And we were thinking, well, maybe if we get in at 4:00 in the morning, we won't have to do them. They'll give us another day. Not. And we became best friends on this trip. So, and we are amazing friends to this day. And so I just bring that up because we were, she was Chapel Hill, NC State. They beat us, yes, the majority of the times. I don't even know if we ever beat them once. I don't think we did, sad enough. Sadly, I don't even think I should say that out loud, but I did.
That sounds like it's probably true. Was it a huge adjustment coming from Division III Marymount, where kids were dribbling out the ball women were dribbling the ball out of bounds, to the ACC, which was the top conference in the country at the time, probably still is. Was it a big adjustment for you, or were you able to seamlessly move up in class?
Yeah, I think it was pretty seamless. I think I was ready and excited, and I knew the work I had to do before the summer before, and I did that. So it was like a march right in to my girls who were waiting.
Yeah. So, well, after college, you're probably looking around, what am I going to do next? And you mentioned earlier how you got involved in the national team pool, but what was the process of, going on to the next stage in your life?
So I went, I played with the Warthogs.
Okay. How'd that happen? How did that come to be?
So while I was in and out of the national team camps, Karen Gabera, who was on the national team, her husband, he got the position of the coach of the Washington Warthogs. And he had at the time asked, I believe it was Mia and I, if there was any interest in trying out for the team. And Mia was all over the place at the time. And I had told him, like, sure. I loved indoor soccer. I always loved indoor soccer since I was little. I think it's just the speed of the game and the touch on the ball, and it's constant, right? And so I was all for it. And we had tryouts there was a little, do you remember the Sports Network out in that Jill Ellis and John Ellis?
Manassas. Yeah.
Manassas. Yeah. And we would train there at times. And so, Jim he just took me aside and he said, listen, I'm giving you a tryout, but you have to make the team. Like, I'm not just going to give you a spot because you're a female and we think it would be good if a female was on the team or whatever. He's like, if you don't cut it, you don't cut it. And I was like, well, no shit. Like, I don't want to be on the team if you don't want me on the team, And so, yeah, we tried out, and I actually had really good tryouts, and I was scoring a lot of goals and stuff. So I was kind of in my element, and I made the team. So it was exciting back then.
Was it tough playing against the men? Were they physical with you? Did they treat you like one of them, or were they a little bit nice?
No, they actually weren't. It was nice though. I had, gosh, and when you're bringing all these up, these like different times of my life, and it's amazing these people that I was surrounded by. But like Dante Washington, who I'm sure you've heard of, Goran, I can't remember his last name, and there was, I'm going to have all these brain farts on names now. Troy Snyder and Dave Tenney, who's big time now, and all his stuff. He was our goalkeeper. They were very hard with me. They didn't want me to, they didn't treat me like the girl, that's for sure. They did go hard with me. Some of them, I think some of the other teams, when we would play the other teams, they weren't a fan of having a female on the team. And I recall a couple of guys, I wasn't in their conversation, but I overheard the conversation, and they were like, it was Billy, I can't remember Billy's last name, but he basically was like, you have no idea, just watch. And then I was like, maybe they do think I'm part of the team, because sometimes you second guess being the only girl. You did everything on your own. I was in we played at US Air Arena. I would normally be in my own dressing room. I'd have Liz come. Liz was my sidekick back then. I'd be like, can you just come? Because I'm in the locker room by myself. I got the whole Capitals locker room and nobody but me in it. So, but they never treated me differently. And there wasn't any like tension. There wasn't any, like, they're the girls there. I mean, they did things with me around, didn't give two shits that I was there. And we were just, doing our jobs and having a good time doing it.
What advice did you give Christine Lilly, your ex-rival at UNC, when she came and joined the Warthogs the next year?
She didn't need advice. I should have taken advice from her the year before. But no, she's amazing. So any arena Christine can fit into. I wasn't worried about Christine.
Okay. So, well, anyway, you end up playing some pro soccer. You went over to a historic club, Lazio. Probably back then you probably had no idea what that was, but now Americans know. We know the foreign clubs so well that everyone knows that's one of the top clubs in Italy. So, what was the process of you getting to play in Italy?
Yeah, so that was exciting. Lazio had reached out. So then they were trying to get all the Americans they could over into their league because they wanted more Americans because we were the greatest. Jill Rutten was over there, and Jill Rutten I played at NC State with. She was now over in Italy playing up north. I want to say in Genoa. I'm not 100% sure, but she was over there for a while. So I ended up connecting with Lazio. They were like, we really want you to come over. I didn't speak Italian at the time. So when I went over to Lazio, well, they didn't speak English. So it was like the first year of like a lot of trying to figure out what the hell everybody was saying. Luckily, the language of soccer is kind of universal. So when we were on the field, we would figure stuff out. And it took me the first year to really understand what the hell they were saying. They were very nice. The team was great. The coaches were great. The club was great. I didn't have one problem over there. They treated me like gold. my family actually is part Italian, my grandmother's side. So they love that, to have like the Italo-Americana over there. And it was just a really good time, really good food, really good soccer, and it was a blast.
Was the soccer on par with the ACC, or was it better?
I think it was probably better. They're just a lot more physical over there and a lot faster, a lot more technical. But I mean, it was comparable. It would have been a little, maybe one step up, but yeah, it was all comparable, I'd say.
Where did the players come from? Because the Italians, in Europe at the time, soccer, our females in America have always played soccer, but in England, especially in parts of the world, soccer wasn't considered necessarily ladylike. So where did the European players come from?
They were all around Rome, the Rome, Naples area. And you're right. Back then, it was almost like the girls were amazing soccer players. They were all like the kind of misfits in the family, because their families were like had these businesses or were doing whatever they were doing. And then these girls wanted to play soccer, and that just wasn't as big as it is now. So they were kind of like, yeah, my family's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you playing soccer? So, but now obviously it's changed so much over the years. I think they miss, they would have wanted it to be like it is now, but it wasn't. But yeah. So.
Well, so how did you get into law enforcement? My guess is your experience with the Warthogs and playing with a bunch of dudes probably helped with that transition.
It definitely helped with the transition. My father was an FBI agent, and when I was in Italy, he was actually running the islands, he was in Hawaii running the Hawaiian Islands with the FBI. And then, so I didn't really see him much. And then he came back to the East Coast, and he got diagnosed with cancer in 1998. It was like March 1998. And he called me, and I was overseas, and he said, hey, I got some bad news. And he tells me, he proceeds to tell me he has cancer. He has 3 to 6 months to live. So I was like, wow. My sister had just started coaching at Princeton that year, and my brother just started law school. So I was really the only one that could get there to be there with him, because we didn't want to put him in like hospice or somewhere away from anybody. So my parents had been divorced. He was on his own. So I broke my contract in Italy. I had a couple more years, but I broke it, and I came home to take care of him. So fortunately, again, I was able to spend quality time with him, and I took care of him till he passed. And he's the reason I got into law enforcement. I wanted to go FBI initially, and he had steered me away from that. I had a son when I lived in Italy while I was playing there. And so my son was young at the time. And he said, with the FBI, you're going to move around a lot every 2 to 3 years. He said, local law enforcement's the way to go. I want you to be stable, have him in one place. And so that kind of spearheaded my employment into law enforcement.
Did you enjoy the life of a police officer?
I did. So with it comes a lot of things that we go through, people don't normally go through. So it is a lot when you're in it. You go on calls nonstop. I mean, you could have a day where you go to a dead baby, then you go to a domestic, then you go to, a destruction of property, to a stabbing. I mean, literally your 12-hour shift can be that way. So processing all that you see and you do and you go through, can take a toll, but it's an amazing, amazing career. And I did a lot of things. I was able to do like undercover narcotics, where I did prostitution stings. They put me up in hotels and, post me on Backpage. So those were fun things. I did robbery homicide for a long time. I did, sex crimes, special victims unit stuff. So I touched a little bit of everything in my career. And at the time, my husband was a canine handler with our department. And we started in our backyard training dogs, boarding dogs, taking care. Initially, we got into this because we were like, we didn't want cops to have to pay an arm and a leg to leave their animal when they were going on vacations and stuff. Cops don't make a lot of money. So we were like, yeah, let's just board a couple dogs and it'll be extra income and we can help them. And so anyways, it just grew and it grew. We started into training and all that. So that was all going on while we were still working. And then eventually in 2018, my husband's like, I think I need to leave law enforcement because the business was growing. So we weren't quite sure how that was going to work out. If we, small business, we had never started a business, owned a business. And so he left and I stayed at the department for a few more years, and I just retired in 2022. So
Congratulations. Well, before we get to your business, I'm curious, as a police officer, do you get the same adrenaline rush as an athlete gets, like for the big sting, the danger comes with, maybe someone has a gun. Is it similar? Mm-hmm.
It is, and more, and a little bit more, when lives are on the line. But yes, that adrenaline going, you have a shooting or stabbing in progress and you just turn your lights and siren on and you're going 120 miles down the road and not knowing what you're going to get when you get there. It's a lot of adrenaline that you're carrying, and it's good and it's bad. Times are changing, obviously, for us in law enforcement, and people always ask now, like, why is everybody leaving law enforcement? It's like everybody's going, and I'm like, yeah, a lot of it is they started, and I'm not against body cameras. I think it's great, but what I tell people is, if you had a doctor going into a surgery, and doctors kill patients all the time, right? But if they had to all wear body cameras going into surgery, right? And then a patient dies, and then somebody later, you had a medical board that they're watching the cameras going, oh, that move right there where he cut, nope, I wouldn't have done that. That's probably what killed him. Let's put him in jail. And he goes to prison. How many doctors would we have?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just a hard time right now for law enforcement. I'm really glad I'm out. Times have changed, but when I was in 20 years ago until recently, best career ever.
Well, see, I would look at that a little differently. And I'm someone who's never been close to law enforcement in my life, but when we were kids, you really could not have a gun outside your home unless you had a permit. Doctors had guns. There's hunting rifles and things like that. I would think nowadays, there's so many people are carrying guns, carrying weapons. We don't even know who has what. I would think as a police officer, that'd be very uncomfortable when you pull a car over and they could be armed to the teeth. It's not like people didn't have guns a long time ago. There's just so many more guns today. I would think it'd be very challenging for the police officer not to be the most heavily armed person in an exchange with a civilian.
100%. And this is why everything that when a cop does something, so like if you get to a scene and somebody's acting, erratic, you want to put them in handcuffs, put them on the ground just to take away that threat. And some people may view it like, why are you being so hard? Like, listen, either I need to be hard or people are going to die one way or the other, because you don't know who has a gun now. So you're trying to have these normal conversations with people, and they do something and not following directions, right, is a big one. If you're being told by a cop what to do and you don't do it, well, then imagine what the cop is thinking. Like, okay, now, because that raises their level of like, what's going on? I'm giving you a demand and you're not doing it. So where do you go? Does he have a gun? Do I keep telling him, do this, and he doesn't do it? Eventually, you got to make a move.
Yeah. And I also think that the publicity of all these situations when things don't go well has made everyone a little edgy, the policemen and women, and also the people that are under suspicion. But let's go to your business. What is your business's name? I should know it. I've seen it on Facebook numerous times and also Instagram. And what sets you guys apart? I know obviously you must have some great training being from your husband's from the canine world.
So we are my 100% disabled veteran-owned company through my husband, and we employ veteran and canine, police canine handlers that are either getting out of the job. We have a lot that are also still working on the job. So we are employing, veterans getting out and the police getting out, giving them a place to land. And we try to help as many as we can. We do have people that aren't in law enforcement or military, but that's our main goal. And we're Ridgeside Canine. We're in 13 locations, 8 states right now. We started just here in our backyard. And so it's going really well. All of our locations are veteran owned. So veteran or police owned. And yeah, it's been really great. We train house pets. We sell working dogs. We sell dogs to police agencies, police canine dogs. We do a little bit of everything. If it involves a dog, we're on it. Training, boarding, daycare. We have a brick and mortar in Winchester, and it has a pool. It's only for dogs. So yeah, anything to do with dogs, we will help you out.
And are those franchises that are in other states, or do you actually own those as well? Are they?
So they're sort of, it's a licensing agreements instead of,
Gotcha.
Instead of the franchise. Yeah.
Well, I thought we end with, so I noticed that you spoke to Julie's tribe, her William & Mary soccer team the other day, and it seemed to go really well. I could tell by the photos that you were enjoying yourself. Is this something you want to do a lot more of? Do some inspirational speaking or maybe even instruction about self-defense? Yeah,
so it is actually. So, when you get out of a career, you're always like, what am I going to do? And so I want my next year to be, it's really, I just call it giving back. Like I want to be able to, I talk a lot about safety, not so much self-defense in terms of like moves and all that, but I talk more about keeping your head on a swivel, things to look for when you're going into places. When you go into a building, how you would get in and get out if shit hit the fan. 1 is none, 2 is good, 3 is survival in terms of walking around campus and all that. It's little things. And a lot of people are like, I carry mace. Well, have you used it before? Have you trained with it? Because my guess is if you need to use the mace, you're not going to be able to know how to use it because you've never used it, or is it even accessible? So I talk about things. I always say, you have to train your brain. It's like anything else. It's like when you go to play soccer, you can't just step on the field and be great, right? What are you going to do in a fight or flight situation? And you don't really know unless you train your brain. It's something you have to think about. A lot of us live with our head in the sand and like, it's all good until it's not. So I don't scare. I just want to prepare. And so, yeah, my goal is I talked to a couple little teams. I may go to GW, SU, Roanoke, anybody who wants to talk to me, I'm willing. So I just want to, like I said, I want to give back for this amazing people I've been surrounded by my whole life. And now I think that I can give back with some of the knowledge I have just to have our girls and women and guys too, just be safer, know where you are when you're there and who's around you and how the hell you're going to get yourself out if something happens. So those are the things I talk about.
Oh, I'm sorry, interrupted. It sounds like it could be a great podcast as well. So, yeah. Well, look, Colette, you've had a great career, amazing journey. You're very self-deprecating in your journey about your academic struggles and stuff. And it's amazing how that's driven you to be so successful and to accomplish so many great things. I talked to a lot of, well-accomplished athletes, and your journey is different than any of them. And you've accomplished more than most. And it's just incredible what you've done. So I'm really glad get a chance to talk to you. Like I said, I don't ever remember talking to you. Did you ever go to Mason and Chandler's games? I don't remember seeing you.
No, I don't think. And Liz and I were just talking about this because she was like, have you even really talked to him that much? And I'm like, I feel like I know you, but no, we really haven't connected, but I'm so glad we did. I mean, all of our people, I think between us are kind of brought us together, right? The Jasons and my brother, my sister, Liz. So
yeah, I knew Liz really well because Liz and I we used to play pickup basketball, and And then, you know, she was such good friends with Jason and stuff. So, but anyway, I'm really glad you decided to do this.
I
Great
do have
story.
to say,
Yeah.
just before we go, Liz is probably the most amazing human that's ever been involved with my life. I'm sure you probably feel the same way, but
Yeah.
she was such a great athlete. She was also a soccer player, basketball player, and she's been coaching for all these years at Shenandoah, and she has made them amazing. And she's just a hard-driven go-getter, been by my side since day one. And I would die for that girl. She is like my ride or die for life, no matter what. So don't ever do anything mean to her, because it'll be me coming after you.
Well, I'm afraid of Liz anyway, so I wouldn't need that threat. Liz is
You should be.
Liz is a pretty scary person. But you know,
Yeah.
the thing about Liz is the times I've gone to Liz for advice about soccer, because you know, my son played, I didn't play soccer, and he loved it. And every once in a while, knowing that she's a club coach and also at Shenandoah, and she started her own club as well. She's done a lot in the game, good player too. But I was always really impressed by the kind of advice she would give. You know, if you know Liz, she has kind of a rough exterior. So you would think as a coach, her advice would be kind of hardcore rough. And I was always surprised and impressed by the level of advice, the things that she would tell me. And she was very important in the way I tried to advise my own son about a soccer career. So yeah, I
agree. And she's been that role model to my kids as well. They call her Aunt Lizzie. I mean, she's very solid advice, and I've gone to her for advice my whole life. So
yeah. Are your kids athletes? We didn't talk about that.
So my oldest he played soccer at Shenandoah, and then he went to William and Mary grad school. He's now back in Italy, working. And I have twins that are just about to graduate, and they're actually going into the military. One is going Marine Corps. He leaves June 20th, unfortunately. And I can't talk too much about it because I'll start to cry. And then the other one's going Air Force, and he'll be leaving sometime in July. So they literally graduate. They've wanted to go in the military since they were 5 years old, and they're going for their dreams. So they're going.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. You're going to be empty nest pretty soon, it sounds like.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Or in a white padded room, one or the other. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, you'll figure it out. And I'm sure you'll find a way to go see them, and I'm sure they're going to do great. So
yeah.
But anyway, well, Colette, it's been great talking to you. Hopefully, maybe we can bump into each other one of these days, and
I love it.
We'll get Liz and Jason out and have lunch or something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So again, well, thanks again for doing this, Colette, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
You're welcome.